This is ANTIC, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
I could play a game with these the way I've got it. Why not? One of these things is not like the others. Which one is different? Do you know? Can you tell which thing is not like the others? I'll tell you if it is so.
Consumer Reports tests educational software, and so he made a big production about, let's see if our game is in it. And it turns out Consumer Reports did indeed review our game. They must have sold a few because I remember getting a check for $12.
This is ANTIC, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Kathy and Phil Bergh published one program through Atari Program Exchange, I'm Different, which first appeared in the inaugural APX catalog, winter 1982-83. The program won third prize in the education category in that catalog. It was one of the few commercial programs developed in the Pilot programming language. Kathy and Phil also wrote 3 articles, also about Pilot, for ANTIC magazine. I'm going to read the description of I'm Different from the APX catalog. I'm Different by Kathleen and Philip Bergh. Recommended for ages 3 to 7, written in Pilot and machine language. Colorful workbook-style exercises for preschoolers. Here's a first for APX, our first Pilot program, designed by an experienced teacher and a professional programmer. It's one preschoolers are sure to enjoy. I'm Different introduces the concepts of same and different in an entertaining, non-competitive game that doesn't keep score and has no time limit. Using a joystick controller, which can be held in a left-handed or right-handed position, a child guides an invisible turtle to the general area of the graphic design that differs from the others displayed on the screen. The turtle leaves a trail wherever he goes, and his path can indicate how well the child understands the concept. Older children can also trace over the designs or practice their letters. To check an answer, the child presses the joystick button. Correct responses cause flashing colors and a merry tune. 5 graphic choices, ranging from differences in color or shape only to classifying objects, span 5 difficulty levels. I'm Different can help children learn hand-eye coordination, observation, classification, concentration, and other essential reading readiness skills. When discussions of the color, shape, size, and similarities and differences of the designs accompany gameplay, the skills gained by the child are even greater. The authors invite written questions and comments. Review comments. Modeled after traditional workbook activity, this Pilot program adds color, graphics, and sound. Its feedback methods use color and sound instead of yes-no responses, making it ideal for young children. Teachers will welcome this extension to their regular computer-assisted instruction materials. The user manual is excellent. It contains thorough explanations of the program's operation and design. Requires Atari Pilot, 1 Atari joystick controller. Order information. It was available on diskette only, which required 32K of RAM. It cost $22.95 and was APX catalog number 20183. This interview took place on May 24th, 2016.
Morning.
Good morning. Kathleen, how are you?
I'm fine, but I'm only Kathleen when I'm in trouble, and when I hear my middle name, it's a big trouble.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Don't want to do that.
No worries.
Is it Phil or Philip? What's he?
Yeah, he's Philip when he's in trouble, too.
Okay, so yeah. Phil?
Phil's on the other line. Belatedly, my husband just logged on and Googled I'm Different, and turns out that somebody's mounted an entire game of it on YouTube.
Oh, really? Yeah. They'll play anything on YouTube. It's like, let's play this. I mean, it makes sense if it's some, complicated game, but then it's like, yeah, we're going to play this preschool game. Yeah.
I know. My granddaughter, our granddaughter loves World of Goo, and you try to get OCD, which is obsessive completion, for how the highest points you can get on a particular level. And if you can't figure it out yourself, you can Google it, and somebody has put it on. Look, I did it in 4 seconds, or I got 5,000 balls, or whatever. But it never occurred to me to Google something I did 30 years ago and don't remember anything about.
Nice. Hi, Phil.
Well, hello. How are you?
Good. How are you? I would like. So it says in the catalog that the program was made by a experienced teacher and a programmer. Which is which? Who is who?
I'm the experienced teacher.
And at the time, I was the experienced IBM mainframe programmer.
Oh, excellent. All right, so I'd like to hear, to start, like, before the beginning, set me up with the prehistory. I'd like to know how you guys met. I want to know how you guys got interested in computers and sort of how you ended up with an Atari. Kind of set me up with what happened before I'm different.
We met in college. I was in the School of Education.
And I was in the physics and math program. We both went to the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that we did together was play with the computer, and in those days that meant that during the day they used the mainframe computers to do all of the school stuff like grades and finances, and overnight they would run our programs and we would have to submit them on stacks of little typed pieces of paper with holes.
All right, punch cards, yeah.
No, it predated the punch cards.
Oh, really?
It was actually punch tape.
Wow.
UPS was using the GE time-sharing system. Mm-hmm. So we had to punch our programs using Fortran 4 onto the punch tape. We would then dial in to the GE time-sharing system, transmit our punch tape, run the program, and get the results back on the printer. Well, that worked pretty well until the frat rats discovered that was the only telephone line on the campus that could make long-distance phone calls without going through the exchange, without going through the switchboard. Mm-hmm. So they proceeded to use up the entire year's budget for remote computing, for the telecomputing via GE within a short period of time.
It's like calling home and stuff like that.
For their girlfriends.
Girlfriends, yeah.
And whatever else.
Japan, just to say they did it.
Right. Oh, man. Yikes. So does that mean you couldn't dial in anymore? What happened then?
Well, what happened was they put severe restrictions, and they had people logging in on a paper log and presenting ID. They had a monitor, a person monitoring the usage of the computer. And that seemed to solve the problem. Well, again, this was pretty much in the early days. I graduated from UPS in 1972, so computers were still pretty new. No one was really sure what they could do with the computers. Well, UPS decided that the computers were the wave of the future, and they brought in I don't remember, I think it was a UNIVAC system to run their accounting programs. Well, they would run their accounting programs. Kathy already mentioned they would run the accounting programs during the day, and during the evening hours they had excess cycles since they weren't running. They weren't running the computer for university businesses 24 hours a day. So they had excess cycles, and they made them available. One of my physics professors decided that since we now had a computer on campus, we should learn how to use it. So he proceeded to teach the physics department how to program in Fortran 4. We took all of 2 weeks to learn Fortran 4, which was a good thing because the university only had one course in computer programming. They had an introduction to Fortran 4 programming, a 1 semester long program that did not teach us as much as we learned from my physics professor, because for the teaching by the physics professor, he had a definite reason to learn how to use the computer. We had physics problems that had multiple iterations that we had to run through hundreds, if not thousands, of iterations, and that was something that you could do best with a computer. So we were doing things like drawing pictures. We were plotting on an XY axis, plotting X's and dashes and making pictures on the printer. Well, that worked pretty well, but one of the computer operators canceled one of the printouts. It was halfway through drawing a complicated picture of some kind, and he wrote down the reason for canceling the program was that we don't have a plotter. Even though it was in the process of plotting the picture, he canceled it because we don't have a plotter. So that was our early experience dating back to 72.
My education minor was in math, and so I took the Fortran class and as many of the physics classes as I could just to hang out with my boyfriend.
Yes, okay.
Typical. And we would do terrible things like if you put next page instead of next line, you could get the paper coming out of the printer so fast that it would shoot across the room. So, the playing around that we did in college came out in the program that we wrote for Atari because they came up with a language called Pilot, which was promoted for teachers. And after we graduated, Phil went on to try to get a master's degree in physics. And in order for him to be able to come home and still do homework, because I was still at UPS, I bought him for Christmas the first calculator, the HP 35, that would do 17 simultaneous equations. I mean, it was like a big, huge computer that you could hold in your hand, and we still have it someplace. It still works. But now you can get the same thing in a cereal box, I'm sure. But we continued to be interested in the computers and in the programming languages that were available. Phil bought a Sinclair ZX81 when personal computing first started. And then we got into the Ataris because it was the best backbone with the player missile graphics and the ease of doing your own programming. Today, I think people look for a computer that they can do their taxes and type letters and run programs that somebody else writes. But in those days, if you wanted to do something fun with your computer, you should write it yourself. And frequently you had to type it over again because you had no way for the computer to remember it. So if you wanted to do it again, then you'd have to type all the commands in again. Back in the dark ages.
Right. So you started with Atari 800?
Well, actually,
400?
we started with, Kathy mentioned the Sinclair ZX81. We bought one of those in 1981 as a kit. It was the first computer available for under $100. It was $99.95. And it came as a printed circuit board and a bunch of little baggies with individual components. And I had to put the whole thing together. So
fun.
She mentioned that you had to type programs in. Well, they had actually advanced beyond that. The Sinclair had a cassette tape interface, so you could set the recording level. If you did it correctly, you could capture the program on the cassette tape, and then you could feed it back in acoustically and re-enter the program. One of the first programs that we wrote, our daughter at the time was a year and a half old, and we wrote a program for the Sinclair using all of 2K of memory that would present 4 images on the screen, and you had to pick out which one was different. So that was the genesis of the Atari program, I'm Different.
Oh, nice.
At the time, Kathy was saying, well, I could see having a computer in the house when the kids are, 8, 9, 10 years old, but at a year and a half, it's premature. She'd never use it. Well, our daughter would play this silly game on the Sinclair for hours on end and never grow tired of it.
Wow.
And Kathy said, well, I guess maybe kids could use computers as young as a couple of years old. So that's how we got into it. And we looked around for a computer. We looked at the TRS-80s. We looked at the Apples. We looked at the Commodore, the VIC-20. I think the IBM PC had just been released. It was overpriced. It didn't do very much. The graphics were very poor. And the distinguishing feature on the Atari was the player missile graphics and the ease with which you could create objects and move them about on the screen. We purchased an Atari 800 computer. We got a disk drive. We got
we had a cassette drive.
the 850 interface, the 810 disk drive, the 410 cassette recorder, and we didn't really know what we were doing. So we got involved with a local Atari users group in the Tacoma area and learned quite a bit about the computers. When Atari released the Pilot language, we took a look at the Pilot language, and Kathy fell in love with the turtle graphics. She loved the idea that you could instruct the computer or the invisible turtle to move ahead so many units, turn left, turn right, tell it how many degrees to turn left and right, tell it what color to plot in, and it seemed like a nice, easy way to instruct kids.
Sure.
So what ended up happening was at one of the computer meetings for, I think it was Space, Seattle, Puget Sound, Atari computer enthusiasts, they brought in as speakers people from Atari. And one of the speakers was talking about how they really liked the Pilot program, but nobody was doing anything with it. They had Atari Program Exchange, but nobody was writing programs and through the Atari Program Exchange in the Pilot language. And he actually gave us an updated version of the program. So then we had two Pilots in exchange for me saying that I would write a program and give it to APX. Submit it to APX. And it was challenging because sometimes you want to do things, and I was used to having Phil and being able to do machine language program subroutines in BASIC. And in Pilot, they didn't document a way to do that, but Phil hacked the system and figured it out.
Well, you've answered a couple of questions that I had already, because I was wondering, this was... I'm Different appeared in the first APX catalog, so that's kind of, you were there right at the beginning, and it seems like they got you by asking at the user group meeting before the first one even came out.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, he was fascinating, and he was really supportive and encouraging, and I think they even sent us another... like a 400.
Ken Harms.
No, that was the guy that did ANTIC. He was, yeah. The ANTIC. We did some articles for ANTIC magazine too,
right.
And Ken Harms was the contact person there. But whoever the guy was from Apple that was at the meeting,
Atari.
made us. From Atari. Sorry, Apple people. He was very encouraging and provided another computer to make sure that the program would run on both of the platforms, the
nice.
400 and the 800.
Wow. And so you were already familiar with Pilot, and then they asked you to do it, because there's a lot of basic stuff in the APX catalogs, and just generally in the interviews I do now, we talk a lot about BASIC, we talk a lot about machine language, even about Forth, but Pilot doesn't come up that much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you had to purchase a whole separate cartridge. You know, it's like Red Dwarf. That means changing the light bulb. and so if people were just barely familiar with one thing, I don't think that they were willing to go out on a limb for something that was simpler and less involved. But one of the very forward-thinking superintendents in our area decided that in his school district, all of the teachers kindergarten through third grade would learn Pilot, and all of the teachers in the fourth, fifth, and sixth grade would learn Basic, and then they would teach their students that were more advanced and needed a challenge how to program the computers. And he brought the Atari computers into their entire district. And so I had the opportunity to teach Pilot to a lot of teachers, and actually wrote a set of discs that self-taught. So basically, I would present a little bit once a week. I would give everybody a disc that had their homework on it, and then the disc would teach them how to program in Pilot. It opened a lot of doors. We did, because the computers were being used with students and with young children, we were asked to present at As a Child Grows conferences about the use of computers with young children, and how they could use it to investigate and learn. And I also presented limits. We limited our kids to 2 hours a day of TV or computer, whichever, so that they weren't just sitting all the time in front of a screen of whatever size. And they would tend to choose to interact with the computer and be in charge, as opposed to just passively sit in front of a TV set and watch something that somebody else had put together.
Well, we also have to put it into perspective. And perspective being, back in 1980, in the early 1980s, we didn't have cable TV, we didn't have DVDs, we didn't have
VHS.
We didn't have a lot of the entertainment opportunities. There were no handheld devices, and the choices of programs on TV were severely limited because there were so few channels.
Sure.
To try to do the same thing today, I think would be next to impossible. To have a child choose to sit in front of a computer, learn how to program a computer, versus watching all the entertainment that's available today. I don't think that the child would make the same choice.
Right. And besides, I mean, a lot of kids today, I think, you just don't have a screen in front of you. You might have two or three. My kids are texting in one and watching a movie in another, and maybe there's music going on another device, and I think it would be hard to learn to program in that environment when you're distracted.
Well, it's the amount of work now, because things are so much more advanced. And with the 8-bit system, with Pilot, I mean, you could literally teach a kid to create a turtle graphics program in a day, in an after-school program. And I had classes where we developed games. Each child created a room in a game, and then all I did was string them together. So you successfully complete this challenge, and then you leave the door and you go into the next door. And the end project for the classroom was that we had a 26-level game where you went through each kid's challenge. Now, in order to be able to play a game on an IBM, big PC, Dell, whatever, it's so complicated. I don't really see any options right now for kids to be able to manipulate the computer themselves and create what they want on the computer, instead of what they get to choose what they want that's already been created, but they don't get to create it themselves.
Right. Yeah, there's some limited options like Scratch and things, but they certainly, I don't think, give the wide variety of things that you could do with Pilot or Basic or something. It's kind of more of a sandbox than a programming language. Yeah,
and because there are so many options, you aren't going to choose to do it yourself because somebody already did it for you. Back in our time, there were so few options before the Atari Program Exchange program started coming out and people started developing in the homes. That if you wanted to do something, you came up with the idea and you figured it out yourself, was actually the best choice.
Right.
Because otherwise the choice was Missile Command.
Right. So I want to get back to your story. So you decided you were going to create the I'm Different program for the Atari and Pilot. How long did it take you? And by the time you were done, was your kid too old to use it?
No, it actually didn't take very long at all. Maybe, a month?
Oh, I don't remember. The biggest problem was drawing the images, making the animations. Again, using the turtle graphics. So the program itself is an example of what you can do with the turtle graphics. We added some things that took time to develop. We were told by Atari that there was no way you could get a program to auto-load using Pilot. There was a lot of programs, a lot of examples of creating an autorun.sys program for BASIC. And Atari said, well, you can't do that with Pilot. You have to sit at the keyboard, you have to tell it to run or load or whatever the command is in Pilot. To load the program, you have to type in the command yourself. Well, we figured out how to do it.
Well, Phil figured out how to do it.
One of the other things that Atari said is that you could not call machine language subroutines within Pilot. And collectively, we figured out how to do that. So we could do the things with the scrolling colors using the horizontal blank period and using the vertical blank period to inject small machine language subroutines and call those routines.
The other thing that we did was, because it was auto-booting, people would think that there was nothing happening. So the first thing we loaded was a turtle graphics routine that drew a table and a fishbowl with a goldfish in it and a cat. And then it said, hang in there, I'm Different is loading.
It's so adorable.
So
your kitty.
So the kids had something to do, something to look at while the program was coming in. When each of the subroutines came in, there was a little train that just drove across the bottom of the screen so that people would know something was happening, and they wouldn't have to be concerned about the fact that it might have, glitched in some way.
Sure.
But the entire program always did the same thing. You had a choice of 4 shapes in the same color, and there were 16 or however many different shapes, and the computer program randomly called up 3 of the same ones and 1 that was different and put them in random locations on the 4 quadrants of the screen. And then you got control of the joystick, and you just drove, literally, the little turtle graphic thing. You just drove it to the answer that you wanted and pushed the button. And if it was wrong, it would go, and then you would drive to another one, and when you got to the right one and pushed the button, it would randomly scroll through colors and sounds, so we didn't have to pay anybody to use any music. We didn't have to violate anybody's... The reason we did it was because our daughter loved Sesame Street, and when they had a little thing called... that had the screen split into 4 pieces and had 3 things the same and 1 different, and they sang this little song about 3 of these things are the same, she would run up and she would start smacking on the screen about the one that was different. And so that picked for us what we would do. And, it worked on the little, the ZX81, and it also worked on I'm Different. And as we added pictures, we added classifications. So first there was just shapes, and then there was the same shape in different colors, and then there were classifications. And the program was exactly the same. The only difference was where you pointed the computer to choose the pictures that it was going to mount. So most of the thing that took the time was just drawing the subroutines, just that would draw the banana and draw the apple and have it be recognizable. And then we also put in, because color was very important to one of the levels, we put in a color test chart just like they have at the TV station, so that the parents could run the color test pattern and make sure that their child had rational choices and that 2 of the colors didn't look the same.
Fun. I played this last night, and I did not notice that feature. That's really cool.
Oh. And yeah, but how did you feel about being able to choose whether you were right or left-handed?
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, was your daughter left-handed? Where did that idea come from? That was kind of a unique feature.
Well, I'm a special ed teacher, and it just always drove me nuts that the kids didn't get to choose which way they had their... I mean, it's just a subroutine. It's obvious that it would be easy to let them pick. Just nobody does it, so we did it. It didn't catch on, though. I can't say that I've ever seen it in any other program.
No, it's pretty rare. Phil, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to mention that Kathy was a special ed teacher, so handedness was an issue that she had to deal with frequently.
True.
So did your daughter end up using this? Did she enjoy it more than the ZX81 version?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and as I was asked to go to conferences and conventions and stores and promote Atari stuff, she went with us, and she became like the test model. I mean, she'd sit down and she'd play whatever, and then, but because she was exposed to us and she'd watched us break out of programs and get into the machine language subroutines and stuff, she was a danger at conventions. And we'd be at a convention, and she'd be like 4, and I was very pregnant with her brother, and people would say, "Oh, she can play on the computer. There's nothing that she can do to hurt it." And then we'd hear her say, N or Y, I can find Y, and I'd have to grab her hand because she would have a thing up that said format disk. You know? Like, how did she do that? I was like, I'm not at liberty to tell you, but honey, you've got to quit pushing the buttons. Daddy uses it.
Stop formatting the disks. Nice. That's hilarious. So you submitted it to APX through the usual channels, and did you get any feedback from them? Did they want anything changed that you remember?
I'm sorry to laugh, but marketing called us. And they said, we really like the game, but we find the black background to be depressing. Can you change the color of the background?
Okay.
And Phil had to explain to the marketing department that Pilot language has a black background, and you would have to refresh it, and it would just flash on and off every time you did so, and that there was absolutely nothing we could do about the black background, and they should have talked to the people that put out the Pilot programming language in the first place.
Nice.
The other weird story that happened was I had a bunch of girlfriends over after the game had come out, and it was weird to go into Safeway and have your name on a package on the wall, or not Safeway, Sears, you know, nice. To be sold at a big chain store and see your name. But the mail came while my girlfriends were hanging around, and my husband went out and got the mail, and he got the Consumer Reports magazine. And in the cover it says, Consumer Reports tests educational software, and so he made a big production about, let's see if our game is in it. And then he flips through a few pages, and he starts reading, and we were laughing hysterically because we thought he was making it all up. And it turns out Consumer Reports did indeed review our game.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's the big time.
Hilarious.
Did they like it?
I don't remember if they liked it or not, but it was so random. You think of Consumer Reports as cars and washing machines and stuff. Nice. Educational programs.
So did it sell a lot? Did you make $1 million?
No, it was not a big seller.
Yeah.
Every Atari computer that was sold came with the 8K basic ROM cartridge. Mm-hmm. To run this particular program, you had to go out and buy a Pilot cartridge, and there was only one program ever written and made commercially available for Pilot. So the added expense of buying a cartridge just to run one game was more than people were willing to spend.
Sure. You mean one besides I'm Different, or was I'm Different the only program that came out?
I think I'm Different was the only program.
Wow.
It might be the only one. We're not experts on this. Yeah. I had another baby, and we kind of totally got sucked into the 2 children take way more time than one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I can can attest to that. It's two. Well, having two is like having eight, but you know.
Yeah, it's a geometric progression. You think it's just an addition, but it's not. It's a multiplication or possibly a square root,
Right.
cube root.
Well, the main reason that we stopped doing things with the Atari computer was when Atari was taken. Well, when they changed management and Jack Tramiel from Commodore took the reins of Atari. The Atari users group, our space group, were jumping into the Atari ST computer, and I was looking at the ST and seeing how different it was. It had nothing in common with the Atari 8-bit computer. The Amiga computer had a lot more in common. It looked like it was the logical progression from the Atari 8-bit into the 16-bit world.
There's a reason for that.
32-bit world.
Yeah.
So the idea that Atari was now headed by the guy who had been the chief competitor of Atari just didn't set well. So we were still very interested in the 8-bit computers. We thought that there was a lot more that could be done with the 8-bit computers. And the rest of the group wanted to move on into the newer world. So the change in technology, along with the change in our family size, pretty much put the Atari on the back burner. We still have an Atari computer and disk drive sitting in a cabinet somewhere that hasn't been powered up for decades now.
Well, the other thing was that since I was at home and not teaching, I chose not to go back to the classroom because I didn't want somebody else to raise the kids. So I started a home business. I did etched and stained glass, and there's only so many ways you can split up your day. We did propose to Amiga a series of educational games where you used construction equipment to make sentences and spell words and stuff. So you could drive a bulldozer through a word to get rid of things and use a big crane to put the letters in the right order and stuff. But it just got kind of lost in all the other things that were going on.
So is that still around somewhere on a floppy disk? The unreleased, unfinished...
No, it was just a bunch of notes on a piece of paper.
Okay.
I ended up doing the exact same thing in... I don't remember what they're called. These kind of flashcard things that you can make for an entire school district. So they used it district-wide, but I used... basically what would be, oh, Lordy, I guess I need a cup of coffee or something. It's just like postcards that you put all the information on and you just flopped from card to card and the kid could make choices. It was really, really simple.
So I'm Different won third prize in the catalog into the education category. Did you guys get to pick from some Atari equipment as your prize?
Oh, yeah, we got an award of, oh shoot, do you remember how many dollars the award was?
I don't know. It turned out to be a couple of computers and a whole bunch of peripheral stuff, and a lovely laser engraved plaque.
Ooh, nice.
So we got a monetary award that we could use to purchase Atari products. So we bought an Atari 410. No, an Atari 400. We bought
we got Jogger and Reflex somewhere.
Yeah, so we got a 400 computer. I think we got another 410 cassette drive because for whatever reason we decided we needed more than one cassette drive.
I think the other one didn't work.
And we bought a bunch of programs through the Atari Program Exchange with the award money.
Well, and then they sent us checks they must have sold a few because I remember getting a check for $12.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh. And the contracts were interesting because if we didn't believe that we were getting enough money, we had to pay to audit their books.
Right.
I can't imagine how much that would cost, but no, there's no way that you could afford to audit all of their accounts just to prove that they were supposed to give you $12.12.
Right. Thanks. I want to talk briefly about you guys wrote for ANTIC. I love that. I think you wrote 3 articles, and they're all bylined by both of you. You just seems like you guys were just doing all this together, and I love that. Can you tell me about that project?
Well, whoever did the most on the article, their name came first. So,
nice.
So that'd be you.
Well, for 2 of them, you were. The last one was like all about how to control what happens next using machine language. So Phil did most of that, and but again, it was stuff that we had used for I'm Different that ANTIC Ken Harm from ANTIC contacted us and said, we want to write about Pilot. We want to encourage Pilot, and there isn't anybody that's doing what you guys do, so can you teach the rest of us how to do it? So we started with the train from I'm Different, teaching people how they can redefine the alphabet letters or whatever keys are on the screen to be whatever they want, and then type pictures instead of, it's like the difference between Helectiva or one of the normal fonts and dingbats.
Right, right.
And then you could animate them by just retyping the line with the characters further down. So that's all that the train is it just keeps retyping those letters that represent the front and back half of the engine and the front and back half of each of the cars. It just keeps moving it further across the screen. And then you just slow it down with the do loop for how many times it has to go around so that it doesn't race across the screen too fast for your eyes to see it.
Right.
And that just led from one thing to another. They were like, that was great. Do something else. So.
Nice. So I had to check because you mentioned it. Of the 3 articles, 2 are written by Kathy and Phil, and 1 is written by Phil and Kathy. So I can see who did most of the work for these things.
Exactly. But because merging traffic was mostly about the machine code, Phil did most of the work on that. Plus, I was extremely pregnant, and before that article came out, we had a baby boy.
Oh, great. Nice. Which is why that was your last article, I bet.
It wasn't just that. We did write one more article, but by then there just wasn't enough interest for ANTIC to have another Pilot article. Because I called Ken and I said, I've got this idea. And he was like, you know what? There just aren't, people have not picked up the Pilot torch and are not marching on with it. So the baton has been dropped and it's just going to lay there on the track.
What else haven't I asked you that I should have about that time?
To tell you the truth, until you called and said you wanted to do this podcast, I don't think we've thought about it or talked about it for 30 years.
Nice.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I think probably our children every once in a while, when talking to our granddaughter, might say, well, when we were kids, Grandma and Grandpa would write the programs if we wanted to do something. You couldn't just download it. You couldn't just call up the app for 99 cents.
Right. Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of my dad talking about having to go out to the woodshed and cut the wood. It's just a rite of passage for a different time.
Right.
Yeah. We just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And Kathy, because of her background as a special ed teacher, had ideas of how to present basic concepts to students, especially students with learning disabilities. And my background, when we left college, I had taken all of the computer science courses that were offered at the school, which was precisely one class in Introduction to Fortran 4 Programming.
Mm-hmm.
That was the entire computer science program, one class.
Wow.
So I got a job as a COBOL programmer trainee, learned COBOL, learned database systems, became a database administrator, and I was a database administrator on IBM mainframes, on Unix machines, on HP Unix machines. I was supporting databases on Microsoft Windows for almost 40 years. In the course of that, I learned various languages. I definitely learned COBOL. I learned IBM assembly language on the mainframe. So I knew what was possible with machine language, which is pretty much everything. Anything a computer can do, you can do with machine language. Courtesy of the Atari computer, we both learned Atari Basic. I got a Mac 65 assembler cartridge and learned assembly language on the Atari computer. We had several disks, several versions of Forth. We had Pilot. We had
C.
Yeah, we had a couple of versions of C. And I branched out to other computers and started looking at the basic language. When Atari offered Microsoft Basic on the Atari computer, we spent $100, which at the time was a lot of money. We spent $100, bought a copy of Microsoft Basic, tried it out a couple of times, found out it was slower than Atari Basic, and it had rounding errors. So when you're doing things with exponents, it would come up with errors, which was a problem that plagued IBM computers for a long, long time, including the same errors appeared in Microsoft Excel. So we pretty much tried out Microsoft Basic, decided that it was a piece of garbage, and left it in the box and never used it.
Which is why when we moved on from the Atari, I moved on to Apple computers and a HyperCard, which was a great program for creating your own. That's the postcards. That's what I did a lot of classroom programming. If I had a student that needed a special lesson and I couldn't be there, I could just create a stack of cards and email it to the teacher, and the kid could work in the classroom. So it was great. But yeah, and the player missile graphics went on to, I do video editing now, and so I've stayed in that video world that Microsoft didn't manage to capture very well. So
yeah, so
it does make it hard to do email.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you guys do today. We're kind of getting there, but...
Well, mostly we're taking care of family, and we've had a death in the family in the last year, and my mom's been in the hospital quite a bit. So we're both almost retired. Phil's actually retired, and so mostly we're sticking around home, taking care of family, taking care of our granddaughter.
I sing in barbershop quartets and a barbershop chorus.
Oh, fun.
I restore cars.
Really?
I've been working on a Nash Metropolitan for 11 years. I almost have it finished. And my granddaughter and I are making a Dalek, which is the bad guy from Doctor Who.
My listeners know what a Dalek is. Don't you worry about that.
You would be surprised how many people do not.
Nice. They might not know what that car is that you mentioned, but the Dalek, we got that covered.
The car is the one that everybody always thinks floats, but it doesn't. It's not an amphicar. It's featured in a lot of Weird Al Yankovic videos.
Oh, okay. All right, then.
We're still keeping busy, but we don't write computer programs anymore.
Sure. All right, I think this will be my last question. If you guys could send a message to the Atari computer users that still exist, some of whom may have used I'm Different when they were young, what message would you send them?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you went on to do things of your own instead of just falling in the trap of doing whatever somebody else told you to do.
Nice. Phil?
I think that pretty much sums it up. Look for opportunities. Look for opportunities to stray from the beaten path, to take the road less traveled, to be different.
Ooh, I'm different.
I see what you did there.
Ooh, it was a segue.
Well, I tend to think in song lyrics. Barbershop is a cappella, 4-part a cappella, and I know quite a few songs, and whenever I can find a song lyric that fits the situation, I'll throw in a song lyric, and we should have some song somewhere that has "I'm different" in it.
We should probably sell our 8-bit stuff to people who still use it instead of letting it just lay around in a box somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't even know where it is. But it was a great time. It was a lovely part of our kids' childhood to let them interact with the computer and tell us what they wanted the computer to do, and by the next day it would do it.
Nice.
So, Kevin, you said that you actually played the game.
Yes. I have my original Atari computer that my dad got when I was in 6th grade on my desk, and it's right here in a place of honor.
Oh, wow.
However, when I played the game, I fired it up in an emulator. I downloaded I'm Different and ran it on my Mac, and that way I get some screenshots and things.
Did it go really, really fast? Because we used to use do loops to slow things down, and I can remember the first time I played Frogger on a newer computer, that frog just ran into traffic.
Well, on my emulator, modern emulators have a thing where you can slow it down, keep it at the original intended speed, so I did that most of the time. However, honestly, when I was loading different levels of different sections of your game, sometimes it was taking longer than I was happy with, so I turned off the speed limitation so it would load it faster, and then I slowed it down again to play the game.
It was a slower time. We got there on a horse.
Right. Uphill in the snow both ways. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
But you had to take the horse to school, my grandfather kept saying, because the school district was required to feed your horse oats and hay when you got to school. And that was the only oats that your horse got because nobody could afford them.
Oh, free meal for your horse. Nice.
Exactly.
Good to know. Yes.
Yeah, it just goes to show how quickly things are moving forward. Where my grandfather went to school on a horse, and now we got to program our own computers when we were kids, and now you just go out and whatever it is that you want, somebody's already done it. It seems like.
Yeah. Amazing.
Can you give a plug for your emulator?
Sure. Are you use Mac or PC?
We're using PCs.
Okay, so there's a couple
I have a Mac.
Okay, good for you, Kathy. I'm with you. So on the PC, there are a couple of different good emulators. One's called Altera, Alterra, I believe, and the other is called, I think it's just called Atari 800, and those are both good emulators. And then you have to, I think, for some of them, you have to actually go find the Atari ROM and then insert it in the right place. If you need help with that, email me and I'll let you know. It's not too hard. And then you can you go to Atari. There's a bunch of sites, but if you go to AtariMania.com, they have pretty much anything you could want to play, including I'm Different. For the Mac, there's one emulator. It's called Atari 800 Mac X, and it works fine. And that's what I use every day.
Thank you so much, because reminiscing is fun. Because of all the illnesses in the family, we've been doing a lot of reminiscing about various family members, and so this has been nice to reminisce about something that didn't involve hospitals and all.
I'm happy to help. Yeah, and then also, in 50 years, maybe your great grandkids will get to hear how you helped invent computing.
How we killed the pilot language.
You were its savior.
Maybe if I'm Different had been a little better, everybody would have bought Pilot.
Oh. Wow. Well, this was great. Thank you both so much.
You're very welcome.
Well, thanks for contacting us, Kevin.
Yeah? One's different. One of these things is not like the others.
One of these things doesn't belong.
Can you tell which thing is not like the others by the time we finish our song?
Thinking about it.
Are you thinking? Look carefully. Can you tell which one is different?
Oh, I am. I'm getting there. Almost.
You sure?
Almost. This is rough. Oh, boy.
One of them's different.
I know. Go ahead, sing some more.
Did you guess which thing is not like the others?
Did you guess real hard with all your might?
Well, if you guessed this thing is not like the others,
Well,
then
I think then you're absolutely right.
I'm right.
Absolutely right.
I did guess that. I
All
did
right.
guess that.
Oh, but Grover, why?
why is this different?
Well, you have to tell why. Well, because that is a circle.
Uh-oh.
What I do?
Well, they're all circles, Grover.
But they're
All four of them are
Yes.
circles
Oh,
different.
boy.
They're all
Oh, boy.
Grover, your
I know, I
name
know.
isn't different. Your name is Grover.
I know.
They're all
Right.
circles.
That is
They're all
a
circles.
I know that is a little circle up there.
Uh-huh.
And
This
the
one here,
other three are bigger circles.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that right?
Right.
Yes,
Big and little.
Big and little.
Three big, one little.
I am so
Terrific.
proud.
You should be.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.